I went to the cemetery at night, and standing in front of my mother's grave, I stood there quietly when I heard a scraping sound coming from behind the graves, slow and rough, close enough to make my neck tighten. The sound stopped when I turned, then started again, louder, as if something was being dragged across concrete. I waited several seconds before moving, and when nothing else happened, I told myself I was imagining it. I left the cemetery fast, keeping my eyes forward, but the sound followed me in my thoughts all the way home. That night, I dreamed I was back at the grave, standing closer, while my mother crawled across the dirt with torn clothes and dirty hands. She did not scream or cry. She only moved her mouth slowly, as if trying to force words out. I woke up sweating and convinced it was grief playing tricks on me. The next night, the same dream returned, but this time she was closer, and I noticed bruises on her arms that I recognized. Those bruises were real, from weeks before her death. When she said she fell in the house, I started remembering small things I ignored, like how she locked doors constantly and whispered when neighbors were nearby. Everyone said she was depressed and chose to die, and I accepted that because it was easier. What no one explained was why her jewelry disappeared, and her savings were suddenly gone. I searched her old drawers and found notes listing hidden money and warnings not to trust anyone living nearby. One name appeared more than once, written casually, and it belonged to our neighbors. They were the same people who entered the house first the day my mother died, and insisted on helping with everything. I remembered how fast they moved, how they controlled conversations, and how relieved they looked afterward. The dreams became more frequent, repeating the same scene without change. I returned to the cemetery again, standing in the same spot, waiting. The scraping sound came back, closer this time, long and deliberate. I stepped back, my foot hitting something solid near the grave. It was a broken piece of wood, old, with dried dirt on it. I picked it up and noticed dark stains along one side. I stood there realizing someone had been here before me, more than once. That was when I thought it was over. I had no idea what was about to happen next. The story isn't over. Subscribe the channel to continue. I stopped going home after that night and started watching the neighbors instead, because every detail now mattered, and every mistake could cost me the truth I was chasing. Their house lights stayed on late, and unfamiliar cars appeared and disappeared without pattern, which told me they were preparing to leave. I waited until they were gone one afternoon and checked the shared storage space behind our houses, pretending I dropped something, and found empty boxes labeled with my mother's handwriting. The handwriting was unmistakable, careful and neat, and seeing it on boxes they owned made my hands shake. That night, the dream changed again, because my mother was no longer crawling. She was pointing behind her, towards something I couldn't see. I woke up before sunrise and went straight to her house, ignoring the warning in my head. Inside, I searched places I never looked before, behind heavy furniture and under loose floorboards, until I found a small metal box hidden inside a wall cavity. The box was empty, but the dust inside was disturbed, proving someone else had opened it recently. I remembered how the neighbors always asked about her finances, pretending concern while watching her reactions closely. I confronted them indirectly, asking casual questions, and noticed how quickly their tone changed. The smiles stayed, but their eyes hardened, and one of them suggested I should stop digging into painful memories. That night, their house was dark for the first time in weeks. The next morning, their car was gone, and so were several belongings left outside days earlier. I went inside their abandoned house through an unlocked door and found bloodstains scrubbed too hard into the floor. In the trash, I found torn fabric matching the clothes my mother wore the last time I saw her alive. I realized then that her death wasn't quick or clean. The dreams stopped entirely after that discovery, replaced by silence. I packed my things and left town the same night, knowing staying would put me in danger. On the road, I received a message from an unknown number with a single sentence telling me to stop looking. I didn't reply. I arrived at my new place exhausted, but alert, checking locks and windows obsessively. 2 days later, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was my mother's missing jewelry and a note apologizing without names. I understood then that they knew I knew. I buried the jewelry near her grave at dawn, alone, making sure no one followed me. When I stood up, I noticed fresh tire marks nearby. Someone had been watching. I left immediately, knowing this wasn't finished yet. I moved again, changed routines, and avoided familiar places. But the fear followed through actions, not feelings. One evening, I found my door slightly open when I returned home, though nothing inside was missing. The next day, another message arrived warning me that accidents happen to people who talk. I realized they were closer than I thought. I decided to confront the truth one last time by returning to the cemetery at night. I stood by the grave, waiting, listening, refusing to leave. The scraping sound returned, louder than ever, coming from behind the headstones. A car engine started nearby, and headlights swept across the ground. I hid behind a tree and watched as one of the neighbors stepped out, holding a shovel. They dug near the grave, frantic and careless, until they hit something solid. I stepped forward before I could stop myself, making my presence known. They froze, then charged at me with the shovel raised. I fell backward, hitting the stone hard, and watched as they lost balance and fell into the open grave. The impact was fatal. I stood there shaking, staring down at the truth finally exposed. In their pocket, I found documents transferring my mother's property and money to them illegally. I covered the grave back up, leaving everything as it was. I walked away before dawn, knowing no anyone would ever connect the dots. My mother's name was finally clear, but the cost was permanent. I live now with the knowledge of what greed did and what silence allowed. I never returned, and I never told anyone. One last question. If you were in her place at that moment, would you have done the same? Be honest. What does her choice deserve out of 10? Subscribe now. The best story is coming next.